So, Brandon, for those of you in my audience who might not know much about you, this might be the first time they're hearing from you. Would you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and who you are and why you decided to run for Congress?
For sure, yeah. Well, I'm a 0702 FFL, a gun manufacturer, small business owner, entrepreneur, all that. But most people would know me from YouTube, where I run one of the largest firearm channels on the internet. We're almost at about 3 million subscribers now, and basically we use that platform just to teach about weapon design, military history, stuff like that, and also teach using comedy and entertainment as a vessel to teach firearm safety and preach about why the federal government sucks, for lack of a better word. But yeah, no, that's kind of what we do. I'm glad that I can contribute to an unusually large audience this morning. That's the first time I've ever been linked to anything unusually large, I think. So that's a great superlative for me.
So, why run for Congress, Brandon?
Well, man, I never really intended to get into this realm. I was going to leave that to guys like you. I didn't want to, go through the song and dance of getting up and ruining my life. But
So you want to
unfortunately,
actually win.
well, that's the idea. Well, I don't even know how much I want to do that. It's like I really want to scare this guy that's in office right now, and I really want him to lose his job. And if that means I have to take it, then I'll bear that burden because this guy is my congressional representative, Tony Gonzalez. He's a weak rhino Republican. He voted for gun control. He voted for amnesty. He's voted against the Republican Party on some issues that I really just don't agree with him on, and he seems very determined to continue doing so. And I would aim to not let him have that chance.
All right. Well, Brandon, that sounds admirable. Certainly, that's the way that we advocate for it. Camellia, she works for Americans for Prosperity, so she does a lot of door knocking and door to door campaigning. And one of the things that we always talk about is that people got to stop complaining about politicians, and they're going to have to step up and run for office. And sometimes you got to hold your nose and do the dirty job, which it's not fun. And I imagine that you've probably gotten some attacks already, Brandon. I mean, they're doing Oppo research on you right now, and I don't know how long you've been campaigning, but just like for a couple of weeks and stuff like that. But how has the Republican Party of Texas treated you so far?
Actually, not too bad. So Tony Gonzalez, even though he's the establishment, incumbent, he doesn't really have a lot of fans in the Republican Party itself. They actually voted to censure him a few months ago because of how much he's turned his nose to the party, and not just the party, because I hate treating the party like it's some sacred thing. Like, if the party's wrong, the party's wrong. But he's also just turned his back on the conservative values that got him elected, and really just kind of the conservative values you'd expect out of somebody from Texas. So and basically the party is just down for anybody that can knock this guy out of his seat, who kind of holds those values a little bit better. So hopefully that's us. We'll see.
Well, what are your values? I mean, we know where you stand on the Second Amendment. I think that's easy enough. But where do you stand on the other major issues of the day? Let's start with, for example, funding to Ukraine. Your thoughts?
So that's an interesting one because that was one where everybody was on board with Ukraine right off the bat, and it's easy to see why. You want a to respect a country's sovereignty if they're being invaded by a third party, a bigger country, in a military exercise. But it quickly became just another vessel for a proxy war, which it's so sad to see that the United States is still not learning its lesson about getting involved in proxy wars in other countries, halfway across the globe. I don't think it would necessarily be that. I understand the strategic, testing of our weapons against literally what they were designed to destroy. I understand weakening our potential adversaries strategically, without having to shed American blood on foreign soil. But at the same time, if NATO's not pulling their weight and the American taxpayer is funding the entirety of a proxy war to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, that's a problem.
You refer there to, or at least you seem to be inferring that Russia is our enemy. There are many in the Republican Party, specifically on the populist right, specifically people who call themselves Christian nationalists. I think the Delaware candidate Lauren Witzke says that, for example, that she identifies with Vladimir Putin and his Christian nationalist principles far more than with Jewish nationalist Volodymyr Zelensky. So you do think that
Hmm.
Russia is our enemy?
Not necessarily. I see that they've been a historic enemy of ours. I don't still carry in that Cold War mentality of Russia is the enemy. There's a lot of things. I agree with some of what she says. Where I think they have a lot stronger family values and are more rooted in traditional conservative values over there to this day. A lot of Eastern Europe does as well. But at the same time, their alliances with countries like China and the whole all of BRICS is kind of just the anti-NATO. Strategically, I could see obviously they're who we would be worried about, but I have plenty of friends in Russia, and I don't think the Russian people. It's the same thing. It always comes down to is like the Russian people aren't the enemy. It's just governments bickering back and forth.
That's what I was going to mention. He just said it. It
Yeah.
was like that's so often the distinction that's not made is we don't just distinguish between the people and their tyrannical leaders.
So he answered your question you were going to ask already. All right. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. We have Camellia Peterson in studio. We're speaking to the AK gun guy, Brandon Herrera. He's running for Congress, runs one of the biggest Second Amendment YouTube channels in the world. He's running to unseat his representative, his Republican representative, who he is accusing of being a rhino, would you say, this Tony Gonzalez character?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's we've been having a little bit of fun with him on Twitter, going over to Ox Ranch and taking photos with the actual rhinos they have over there. Like, hey, taking selfies this morning with Tony Gonzalez.
That's very funny, Brandon. That's very funny. All right, well, let's move on to some more red meat issues for Republicans, libertarians, and conservatives. Where do you stand on abortion, Brandon?
So that's one of the fun bits that I get to kind of bow out of that question a little bit because of where I because of where I stand on it.
Okay.
Because my stance on it, and I firmly believe this, is that the federal government should not be involved at all. This is a 10th Amendment state issue. The state should be able to decide this one for themselves. If Texas wants to ban it, that's up to them. If California wants to allow it, as much as we might disagree, that is a state issue. That is the way the Constitution is set up. And in federal office, I really don't think I should have a say in it, is my opinion. And that's something that should be up to state legislature, state governors, and basically the way it's always meant to be. Like the federal government's gone out of control with things that they were never supposed to even have an opinion on in the first place, because people forget the federal government was to provide a basis for all of the states to then go on and create their own laws and as they saw fit. And it's just become this giant monstrosity that has people in California ruling people in Florida. And I just think that's not the way it's supposed to be.
The state of New York quite frequently abrogates the gun rights of its own citizens. It does that on the state level, and the Supreme Court has had to step in multiple times to overturn New York's draconian gun laws. Is it appropriate for the federal government to overrule state law when it comes to the Second Amendment?
I don't believe so, because that is one that is specifically noted in the Bill of Rights. And there's several states that were on the fence about even joining the United States and ratifying the Constitution until certain provisions were made, like the right to free speech, the right to own a firearm. The Bill of Rights was very, very important in the Constitution. So that is a guaranteed. Really, it's a natural right, but is a right that's guaranteed by the Constitution. And
See, I struggle with that because the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, implies the right to life is something that should be protected as well. So I see the conservative argument for a federal ban on abortion, because if we should say that the Supreme Court should overturn New York's gun laws, then why don't we say the same thing for the right to life? You know what I'm saying, Camellia?
Yeah, and it's funny because this was a topic in the debate last night
Yeah.
too. Is the question of whether or not you would do something at the federal level.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but one that probably we don't have to worry about at the moment, because we did at least overturn Roe versus Wade, and
now the states have to worry.
Now the states got to worry about it, right? So
absolutely, the one way I actually could see the federal government getting involved that does make sense to me is just when it comes to the hypocrisy in the law, or really just the inconsistency in the law when it comes to what is a life. I think the federal government really needs to decide better if murder is going to be a federal crime, we need to determine what a life even is, because it doesn't make sense to me that you should be able to kill an unborn baby, but at the same time, if somebody shoots and kills a pregnant mother, it's a double homicide. That makes no sense to me, because the government has not decided yet where a life begins.
That's a good answer there, Brandon. Let's move on to questions about the economy. Donald Trump has proposed a potential 10% tariff on all imported goods. Is that something you'd support?
It depends, is really what it comes down to. I liked a lot of Trump's policy when it came to tariffs on China, for example, because he was talking about how, we have these unfair tariffs where they're taxing the hell out of our stuff, but we don't tax theirs. And that's really not putting us in a good position to remain a superior manufacturing powerhouse throughout the world, like we have been since World War II. But you also have to worry about the issues of, imported goods and things that do sustain our economy, especially in runaway inflation and raising the rising cost of, living and cost of goods here in the States. That could also backfire immediately.
Well, I would highly recommend that if you haven't yet, that you take a look at Henry Hazlitt's book, Economics in One Lesson, because he does a very good job at debunking some of the theories surrounding tariffs and the actual impact that they have on American citizens. But we don't have time for a whole economics lecture right now, but I would highly encourage that you check that out if you haven't read Henry Hazlitt just yet. But I'd like to ask you about the national debt and specifically what you think should be done about it. Congress has the power of the purse. You're running for the U.S. Congress. What do you think should be done?
I think we need to do an absolute overhaul on the amount of runaway spending we've got right now. It's absurd. I remember when I first became politically active, the national debt was only in the teens of trillions, and now it's easily double that and beyond. I don't see how we can remain a first world power and owe trillions and trillions of dollars to every other country under the sun.
Congressman Thomas Massie kind of famously compromised and voted to raise the debt ceiling in the last session. You think it's appropriate for us to continue to raise the debt ceiling in such a way?
I don't think it's sustainable. I think it's something that I guess in the short term needs to be done, but I don't like the fact that it's being done without a plan to stop doing it in the future. That's just kicking the can down the road.
Well, and I would say, in fairness, to Thomas Massie, like he had a strategic reason for doing so.
Simp.
Yes, I
Thomas
would.
Massie, simp.
Well, speaking of simping for congressman, Brandon, do you have who are your favorites in the House and Senate?
There's a few people that I like, specifically even locally. We've got Troy Nehls, we've got Chip Roy. They're very good. I like a lot of what the Freedom Caucus is doing. Sometimes, in the very beginning, a little bit of their methods were kind of, I didn't know if I necessarily agreed with how they were doing it, but they're actually getting stuff done. Even though it's Republican infighting, it seems to be infighting that's at least pushing the party in a more conservative direction instead of this, on the fence middle ground stuff. So I really have kind of been enjoying that.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. Over 110 people watching us on Rumble Live right now. Super grateful for that.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, 53 people over on YouTube. Biggest show we've had in terms of live audience. We're really grateful for that. I know it's because of the superstar guest. Yeah, thanks, Brandon. We appreciate that. Star Power bringing along this morning. But I know that some people, they like to tune into live streams and they pop in, they pop out. Somebody earlier said they poop in and they pooped out, but I think they meant pop in, pop out. So do us a favor and click that like button to help us to fight the algorithm, fight back against big tech censorship of little streams like this that are trying to get out the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like the message that we're pushing out there today, but give him the boo. Yeah, hit the boo button. That the big tech gods don't like what we're pushing here. So help us to push back. Click that like button and subscribe to the channel before you leave today. We'd be super grateful for that. Brandon, who are you voting for president?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I have a prediction.
And there's my evil laugh button. Here it is.
I don't even think I'm going to get an opportunity to do so in the primary. I think Trump is going to win in the primary by a landslide. I just don't know if he can carry the actual election. If I had to predict that I think Trump will win the primary by a landslide and lose the general.
Well, that seems to be the prevailing opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just
I'm frightened.
it's depressing.
8 more years of winter, or 4 more years of winter, rather.
Exactly. The groundhog saw his shadow for sure. Do you like Trump, Brandon?
You know what? I really enjoyed his presidency because I do think he messed up a lot of stuff in as far as like guns and things. I think he had a lot of bad advisors in that regard because I don't personally think he's anti Second Amendment. I don't think he cares that much, to be honest. I think he had bad advisors in the NRA, which really screwed things over for bump stocks and things. But I really liked a lot of his economic stuff. I enjoyed more than anything in the world how much he made people I don't like sad, and that was it was 4 years of very entertaining memes.
Let's be fair, that was a lot of Trump's appeal for a lot of people. He fights.
He fights. He fights. What do you think of Vivek Ramaswamy? He seemed to do pretty well in debate last night. Snake oil salesman or legit?
So I've actually sat down and talked with Vivek fairly recently, about a week ago, week and a half ago, and the man's sharp. I don't know. That's a tough one, especially when you're talking about a politician of that level. Um, I don't know if it's real or not. I don't know if it's authentic, but it came off as very authentic. And he was actually off camera. Was a really nice guy, very sharp. It's one of those dudes you could sit in a room with and realize, oh, he's rabidly intelligent.
Yeah.
This is I am at an IQ mismatch here. This man is clearly the intellectual alpha, but yeah, he said all the right things. Well, happens to me more than I'd care to admit. But he said all the right things. I guess we're just going to see if he follows through with it.
Brandon, I haven't endorsed many people for office, but I think it's quite clear with the fact that I've already donated to your primary that I'm endorsing you in this race, and you have my full support. And I'm encouraging all of the listeners to the show right now. If you don't know much about Brandon, if today's the first time that you've heard about him, definitely check out his website, Brandon Herrera for Congress, and just kick in a small donation if you can. Help Brandon win, because when Brandon wins, liberty wins. That's my point of view. But of course, do your own homework and your own research, because he's a politician now, so I'm sure he'll disappoint us at some point. Brandon, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
I just appreciate it, man, and I appreciate any help that you can offer as well. Because I would love to pick your brain at some point, because you've been here, you've done this, you've done this on a higher level than I ever am going to do it. As far as the libertarian presidential race, your Senate race not too long ago. It seems like not too long ago. I forget how many years ago that was. Now it's kind of a little scary.
Gone by. It's been 84 years.
Well, I appreciate watching you and the way that you've progressed through the years, and I can't wait to find new and creative ways to ruin my own life.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Ruined. The one thing that I learned more than anything, Brandon, is to listen more than you talk. Right? Tell everybody that you think they're pretty. Don't disagree with everyone. Tell them all what they want to hear, and you'll do just fine. And then once you get in Congress and you have power, then be as liberty as you want to be. Brandon, we wish you the best. Anything else you want to share with our listeners before we let you go?
I just appreciate you having me on, man. Even if it meant waking up before 8 o'clock, I still appreciate you dragging me out of bed.
That's sad. All right, thanks, Brandon. You have a great day, man. We appreciate you very much.